Okay, it's now Friday. I don't know the date, I'll put it on the screen. I'm just nipping out now because yesterday when I went to the pharmacy I forgot to hand in a prescription, and this is a prescription I was given by the dentist when I had my tooth extraction, and since that has been the main thing which has slowed me down with this painting challenge, I feel as though it's important to go and get that prescription in to see if it helps. I think it's going to take a week for them to get the prescription in, but still handed it anyway. So yeah, that's where I'm up to anyway. Okay, I got a bit distracted and ended up transferring videos over to the computer, reviewing certain things that I had pending on the system, and then having something to eat. And now here I am. I haven't made any artwork. So what I do have is a couple of these boards that I had from, I think it was from clothing. You know, you get kind of a shirt or something and it's up against a board. And I saved it because I liked this textured side. This is kind of glossy and shiny and I don't really like that, but this side, this is matte, and this will take oil pastel. So I'm going to do 2 oil pastel portraits now, and then I'm going to have a look at doing some editing. So yeah, it's time to get started with a bit of art making. So let's start on the first portrait here. This submission was a real learning process for me. I started off very confident. I drew in, as I always do, with pen, straight in with the ink, the markers and the different points where I want the features to sit for the subject. And I'm comfortable with this. I'm quite happy. It's close enough. It's obviously not going to be perfect because there wasn't enough measurement made, but it's getting closer, and I am deep down trying to train my mind with those measurements so that it becomes intrinsic, and trying to be a bit tough on myself for where things go awry. But this one was a learning process when it came to colour and the execution of the detail and the anatomy of the subject. Because it is a backless dress that this lady is wearing, I then thought, well, the back muscles and the shadows that happen there will be very interesting. So I get down some nice warm tones on the face, and it's all coming along fine. They may look a little bit strange at first, but they always do, and they come together when it comes to the blending side, and you just get down as much as possible until you have to start making decisions that will serve the piece. And at this point I'm just thinking, right, this is going to be fine, it'll go okay, and I just charge ahead with the process. And a lot of doing these types of pieces of artwork is trusting the process. I don't say anything different now. This is part of how you learn, is you trust the process, you go for it, and then the thing which makes art quite interesting is that you learn more from trying to correct mistakes than you do from getting things right the first time. So similar to the measurement where I'm trying to measure by eye instead of doing measurements physically, I'm trying to learn from the mistakes. Now this is the part where it becomes difficult. I lay down the shadows on the back, I lay down a lighter tone on top, then I lay down a darker tone, bits of in-between mid-tones, and I'm trying to get this subtlety on the back. But then this warm colour just creates a look of sunburn, and it doesn't serve the piece. And at first I thought, well, I'm just going to have to leave it the way it is and just live with it. It's a little bit strange, but I'll put the power in the eyes, nice and dark. It will draw the attention of the viewer, and then you won't so much notice how the back looks as though it's been burnt and scarred and torn apart by on a safari or something like that. And that's kind of what it's starting to look like, and I didn't really want that. So after doing this piece and thinking, okay, that's just going to have to be a strange submission where it's not quite what I want. You can see on the back there's kind of a pinkish red in the brown, and it just looks as though it's scar tissue, as if the piece of the flesh is missing, and I wasn't satisfied. So I go back in afterwards and I think it's time to make a a very stylistic choice, and this is not going to be just internal. Outside, I want to draw an outline, and this is how I solve the problem, and I create a completely different style for the piece of artwork in order to create a different feeling and a different communication that you have with the viewer and with yourself. And this really saved the piece to me. You may not feel the same, but for me, this is what's made this piece really work. And I thought what I need to do on the back, because I had all of this subtlety happening, I thought I need to consolidate and simplify the tones on the back. It doesn't need to be this brown going into orange, going into yellow with a bit of pink here and there. It needs to just be strong colours that suggest tone and just communicate something clearly. And because there are so many warm tones, I completely abandoned the reference and thought I'm just going to add this turquoise colour in there just to make it pop in certain parts, and I'm glad that I did that as well. But you can see here that just consolidating the back with the red tones and then adding a little bit of light here and there is already a much stronger image and communicates something better than what it did initially. Now there is room for orange, so it's not as though you can't create this in-between tone. I don't want it to be a tenebristic approach, and tenebrism is when it goes from dark to light quite abrasively, and it's a real juxtaposition of one against the other. Instead, I want it to communicate something a little bit more subtle. I just don't want it to look as though the flesh is missing. I want it to look natural, as though the tones and the shadows are warm and it's not painful. So that's what I did to try and fix the portrait. I think compared to the first attempt, what I've got here is something which is far clearer, and the bold outline is something which I think gives it a stylistic choice and creates something a lot more interesting than what I had initially, which just looked like a failed portrait. So it may not be everyone's thing, but for me it's something which, like, again, these lines, these defining lines on the inside of the on the back, I should say, are something which is a choice that I had to make in order to strengthen the portrait and the style that I was communicating. I much prefer this to the first attempt. Let me know what you think in the comments and give it a try for yourself. If you've never tried oil pastels, they're an interesting and strange media, and I quite like them and appreciate it.